evening sun was sinking low over the endless fields, painting the sky with streaks of red and gold, when rancher Matthew Carter tightened the reins of his tired horse and rode back toward the barn. He had been out since dawn, mending fences and keeping watch for rustlers, the kind of long day that made a man look forward to nothing more than a fire and a warm meal. But just as he reached the old creek trail that cut across his land, something unusual caught his eye. A flicker of white against the dry brush, like fabric where no fabric should be. He slowed, his instincts sharp, every sense on alert. The prairie was quiet, too quiet, and then came the sound. A faint cry, ragged and broken, like a voice fighting to exist. He spurred his horse forward, heart pounding as he rounded the bend, and there he saw her. A young woman, bound to a wooden post, rope cutting cruelly into her wrists, her hair tangled and her dress torn. Her eyes found his instantly, wide with terror, yet holding a glimmer of desperate hope. She tried to speak, but all that came out was a hoarse whisper. "Please, free me." Matthew swung down from his saddle, boots crunching on the dirt as he approached slowly, carefully, as if afraid she might vanish like a ghost. His calloused hands drew his hunting knife from his belt, and with a quick slice he cut the ropes that held her. But the moment the bonds fell away and she collapsed against him, he froze. Her arms, her neck, even her ankles were bruised and scarred with marks that told a story darker than words could hold. He had seen cattle lashed and beaten by wild storms, but never had he seen wounds like this on a human being. The horror of what she had endured struck him like a hammer to the chest. She clung to him with the last of her strength, trembling violently, whispering through cracked lips, "They'll come back. Don't let them take me again." His mind spun with questions. Who were they? Why had they left her here? What kind of evil men treated a woman like an animal to be broken? But one thing became crystal clear to Matthew Carter as he lifted her carefully into his arms and carried her toward his horse. He could not, would not, leave her behind. Whatever storm she had escaped, it was far from over, and by cutting that rope, he had bound himself to her fate. As thunder rumbled on the horizon and the prairie wind howled, Matthew made a silent vow. Whoever had done this would not get her back, not while he drew breath. The storm broke that night, sheets of rain pounding against the roof of Matthew's ranch house as lightning lit up the plains outside. Inside, the fire in the hearth struggled against the drafts that howled through the cracks, but it was enough to cast light across the room where the woman now lay, wrapped in blankets on his old leather couch. Matthew knelt beside her, cleaning her wounds with gentle care, hands that had spent years roping cattle and swinging hammers now trembling as they brushed over the bruises and cuts she bore. When she finally stirred, her voice came out in fragments, soft but heavy with pain. Her name was Anna. She had been traveling west with her family, their wagon bound for new land, when a gang of men descended on them. They carried guns, they shouted threats, and they dragged her away while her father and brothers fought to stop them. She did not know if her family had survived. For days she had been kept tied, moved from place to place like stolen cargo, until finally, for reasons she could not fathom, they bound her to that post and left her. Matthew listened in grim silence, his jaw tight, anger burning in his chest hotter than any fire. These were not mere thieves, they were predators, cruel men who saw lives as toys to break. He had crossed paths with outlaws before, but something about this was different. These men were not just looking for money, they wanted to instill fear. And if they had let Anna go, it wasn't mercy, it was a warning, a message to anyone who might try to protect her. As if fate wanted to prove his thoughts true, a noise sounded above the storm, sharp and deliberate. The creak of boots on the front porch. Matthew's blood turned cold. He reached for the rifle leaning by the wall, signaling Anna to stay silent. She sat up, fear written across her face, whispering, "They found me." The knock came, heavy and slow, rattling the wooden door. Then a voice followed, deep and mocking, cutting through the rain. "We've come for what's ours." Matthew's grip on the rifle tightened, his stance unyielding. He raised his voice just enough to be heard above the storm, calm but edged with steel. "This land's mine, and she ain't yours." A pause. Followed, then laughter, low, cruel, and full of confidence. The door shook under the force of a boot, and Matthew knew the men were ready to take her by any means necessary. He glanced at Anna, her eyes wide with terror, and in that moment his decision was clear. He wasn't just a rancher anymore. He was her protector, her shield against the darkness that stalked her. He leaned close, whispering fiercely, "They won't touch you again, not while I'm standing." Outside, the storm roared as the outlaws prepared to break through. Inside, Matthew Carter stood ready, his rifle steady, his resolve unshakable. He knew that by cutting that rope, he had stepped into a war he hadn't asked for, but one he was determined to fight. And this, dear listener, is only the beginning. If you want to know what happens when Matthew faces the men who marked Anna, if you want to see whether courage can outmatch cruelty on the untamed frontier, then don't miss what comes next. Make sure you subscribe to the channel because the issue storm has only just begun, and the fight for freedom and justice is about to explode.